So I'd like to ask a question about inclusivity. I know this is something that is, I think, near to your heart. You know, open source, reflective of the software development ecosystem at large, is not particularly diverse. I think you've spent some time working on that. I think Ildiko has as well. Any stories that you can say there as far as things that have worked or challenges that you've had, or what can we be doing more of to improve general inclusivity?
Yeah, we have a pretty bad track record, I must admit. I think GitHub studies and then um, other studies have shown that we are sitting at 10% or less women in open source or underrepresented in open source. And I think what OpenStack did in the old days by having groups like Women of OpenStack, having upstream university was so valuable to kind of making it less scary on how to get involved and that there's a support system. I remember the Women of OpenStack. The evening reception was always the day before the conference, so at least you could get to know a few friends, get to build a community, and then navigating the conference or navigating projects became easier because you knew someone. And I think those are the types of activities that Open Source Summit is also doing for newcomers lunch or doing a one-on-one talk or having a lunch for these communities really helps because being alone in a community like that is really scary. And so having like-minded people or seeing that there are others who are also navigating the same journey or learning from each other. Frankly, the way I started also, my first open source summit, I didn't know too many people. And I was nervous about, can I speak at a conference? You feel like you don't belong. And it was making friends at these types of events that taught me, it's okay, I belong too. And learning from the journeys of others really helped me understand I can start small by attending, then I can see which project I want to be involved in, or do a talk, or get it, volunteer my time with something. So I would say, we've come a long way. We've put codes of conduct in place. We've created these friendly mechanisms to welcome new folks, but we just need to make it an institutional muscle. The scaling is the problem, right? And in open source, the inconsistency of open source, that you have a one member project and you have a foundation hosted large project. How do you get everyone to follow good practices of inclusion is the hard challenge. How do you reach all of them? And how do you make sure that we do it consistently across all of these projects and all of the communities is still a scaling problem.
Has either of you looked into the ratio in open source versus just the tech industry? Like if it is significantly different or we are tracking similar numbers?
I think we're different. I would say Phil probably is similar to us. The inside companies, it's like 30% development talent, underrepresented women, and in open source, I believe it's 10. Some of it could be that people don't identify themselves as a female or binary, non-binary, etc., because of backlash or concerns. But some of it also could be the behavior is very different online as opposed to companies where we have HR and we are tracking and we have, policies and protections.
Yeah, certainly some communities have been known to be harsher, but I mean, even OpenStack as a generally friendly organization, in its heyday, it was really hard to get anybody to even respond to you, and much less with a caring, slow, mentoring type of relationship versus a nope, that's not going to work. Try again. or something along those lines. So, it's there is plenty of negativity, and it is tough to persevere right through that. I think the like-minded and having those groups where people can get together as newbies, as underrepresented groups, either one, I think those are probably very helpful and something we should advocate more for.
And you often hear people joining communities, but then dropping out very shortly because there is no support for them, or they find that they're a lone voice in the woods. And even inside companies, we find that certain communities, when they find that they're just one of a kind in a team, it's a very lonely existence. So there's often talk of there should be, of course, support systems and affinity, but also you should really hire more than one person, a certain community, right? So there's at least sharing of experiences and supporting each other and normalizing, what you're thinking. Because sometimes you think, am I the only one who's thinking this way? Am I being too sensitive? And last, I'll just say the intentionality of organizations to invite different kinds of people to speak, examine closely, who's on their boards, who's on their different committees, and who's a speaker at their organization is so, so critical, because people see different faces on the stage or different faces in a room. That gives people hope that I can be there too, or I can do it too, and that someone is speaking on behalf of me or my perspective in the room.
That's a really good point.
I usually wonder about two things. One is when it comes to diversity, like even as a tech industry, if we are really around 30%, we could still do much better. And like how early in education you can start to just really share the thought in terms of you're a human being, you can do anything you want, regardless of any circumstance, including gender, religion, where you're from, and all those kind of things. And I always keep wondering if there's anything more that we could do in the open source communities, since the nature of open source and how it is done and organized, it's still different from the corporate environments. There's a little bit more flexibility and a little more outreach that we could do. So I always keep wondering what else we could do. And the other thing that I keep wondering is like those people in the minority groups who are already in the tech industry, but they are not participating in open source. Did they just not get the exposure? Did they get the wrong message from someone, or from a news headline? And how to change that? Like how to reach those people who think that they cannot do it and might have a false perception just because, I don't know, they heard a rumor somewhere. Because sometimes I understand how the public environment is scary. At the same time, sometimes I keep wondering, like, at least in the public environment, I know what to expect. I see what's happening. I have visibility into it. But when you go to a company, they either have good HR or maybe they are not. Maybe you will get harassed behind closed doors and you'll have no way out and no one ever knows about it. And you're just locked and there's no one to help you. So at the same time, like how to change the perception of the open and public environment being bad, when again, at least you see people who you will be able to turn to, you know what's happening because it is all happening in the public. So these are the things that I keep wondering about, like how we can do a better job at these aspects to move the needle.
There's one area that I think I wanted to bring up to address your question also, Ildiko, is the 30% that we count inside companies and 10% is often just the direct developer population. We really need to expand our minds and say, what's the percentage of people in tech? Because essentially we're saying, if you're not a developer, you're not tech, right? And so if we expand it to anyone who is in any way helping in a tech company, it could be a technical program manager, it can be a technical writer. Those are very technical positions. And a product manager is a very technical position. A product marketing person is often very technical. So if we expand it, I think then we are saying we value all of these forms of tech and contribution. And B, we are saying the number is a lot larger. Hopefully that then says it's a friendly and you belong here. And there are, at least half the population in this company is underrepresented. So don't feel like you don't belong here or it's a scary place. Right? By saying 30% and 10%, I wonder if we are putting the scare of God into people and saying, oh, if you'll just be kind of this little minority group on the side.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, even at the beginning, I think you were mentioning how open source is not just about developers, how it's not just about the super tech roles, and I could not agree more. I mean, I haven't written code for a little while now, maybe longer than a little while, but I'm still participating in communities, and I still believe I'm doing valuable work. So I wholeheartedly agree that we also need to change the perception of contributor equals to code developer, because I don't think it's ever been true. And at the same time, I still see that the perception is very strongly there. If you say contributor, then you probably mean someone who writes code. I personally do not mean the contributor word in that way, but I do experience that when I talk to people and I say the word, I think, I don't know, 90% of the time, that's what people directly associate to. And I think that is definitely something to change, because if it was only people writing code, I don't think open source would be where it is today. And that community and community building and how communities function, that's you need the other roles there and people there who don't necessarily write code at all, but there's so much more to contribute to keep something afloat. So I think that's a very important point to make.
We often shame people, we say you're not tech enough or you're not, technical. And there's a high bar to being technical. And we have developer advocates, we have so many folks who are so important in the understanding of tech and the rollout of tech to customers, but yet we brush a lot of folks with the non-technical kind of you're not good enough type of marker.